Welcome to the channel. You, my friend, just got clickbaited, but it isn't an issue. Before I get into this video, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, and without further ado, let's get into it. So with Black Myth Wukong, going into it, I was really impressed by the graphic fidelity and the overall respect to the lore of Wukong himself. Uh, if you asked me 2 years ago if I thought this game was going to be really good, I would probably say no because I just didn't think it was actually going to happen. But when the 30-minute trailer came out and when the game itself came out, um, I was just I was really astounded by it. And I kind of like how Black Myth Wukong sort of just released, right? They didn't do like any of I won't call it bullshit because it isn't, but they didn't do a lot of like the normal stuff that other uh, developers do, right? Like demos and releasing betas and stuff, right? They just gave like a few game journalists, gave it at a few events and gave it to a few like companies to review it. And by the way, the West went to absolute shit with that, right? I'll go into a rant about wokeness later, but I will briefly say this. Uh, the same way I encourage a lot of people to separate art from the artist, right? As a musician, I would equally encourage people to separate games from the game producers, right? And if I was going to specifically look at the allegations against Game Science for their previous sexist remarks, um, I wouldn't, right? I would avoid these things when it comes to playing games. And if I did somehow find out, I'll be like, it's unfortunate, but I would still enjoy the game nonetheless. And I think it's really important to do that, right? Because the things that people make aren't necessarily directly connected with who they are, right? And that's granted that all these allegations of sexism are true and whatnot, right? And to discuss the other controversy of not enough female representation in the game, uh, I don't think that's really important, right? It's kind of nonsense actually, and I'll get more into that later. For now, let's keep talking about the game. So when referring to Black Myth Wukong, I'm gonna use the word perfect, and I'm gonna use this word loosely, but I do think that the game is perfect, right? And the reason why I say that is because the game, with its price point, is offering you many things, right? And depending on how many things it delivers upon, in terms of what it's offering you, I would say it inches closer towards being perfect, right? So when a $60 AAA title offers you insane graphics, uh, a lot of replayability, great story, um, great bosses, and just being very thorough all around, and it delivers on each one of those things. I would say that it's achieved perfection for its own standards, right? And we'll find that many games nowadays will set a very high standard for themselves, which they won't meet. And these are mostly Western gaming companies, right? Gaming companies I tend not to like right now. Things like EA, Blizzard, Activision, Ubisoft. Oh, Ubisoft. Sorry. Ubisoft. Did I not say clearer? Ubisoft. Um, but that isn't to say that within its own realm of comparativeness, right? If I were to compare it to other games which I consider perfect for their own standards, such as Elden Ring, other FromSoft games, Sekiro, and um, even things like God of War, for instance, that Black Myth Wukong delivers in ways that these games don't, right? And that's the reason why I'm making this title, right? Yeah, if I was to say just the game alone, and the way it plays and your introduction into it, and stuff like that, I would say it's a lot more superior to a title like Elden Ring, because it has a logical tutorial that is super welcoming, and actually does prepare you for what's to come, right? And you can even say that the entirety of the first chapter is kind of a tutorial, or you could even go as far as to say the entirety of the first two chapters are a tutorial, right? I don't know, right? But I just finished chapter one, and it was just challenging enough to the point where I did get frustrated on some bosses a little bit, and I got frustrated enough to the point where it felt super rewarding to beat some of them. So like for me, like a really good boss was the snake in the river guy with the spear. I forgot his name. But his animations were great. He was a really fun boss fight, super high paced. And he was one of those boss fights where I grew increasingly frustrated. But I grew frustrated uh, because I couldn't beat him, right? And that's the kind of frustration you want, because by the end, when you do finally beat him, you get that really like big dopamine rush. Yeah! Get off me! Please! Yes! Yes! Right? And I think that this is where games like Elden Ring do fail, right? Because it is well within the realm of FromSoft's abilities to have bosses, or to make every single boss uh, uh, deliver that same level of dopamine, but in different ways, right? Um, and I mean this in the sense that, when you fight something like Elden Beast, or Placidusax, or Renala, or Fire Giant, um, these fights aren't enjoyable, right? And I think a majority of the community agrees they aren't enjoyable because they have shitty animations, shitty hitboxes, they have shitty terrains, and it's overall a lot of bullshit in these fights, right? And fights with a lot of bullshit, they don't feel fair. And when things don't feel fair, uh, they don't feel fun, right? And I don't want to speak too much about Elden Ring because this video is about Black Myth Wukong. But if Elden Ring is able to make bosses like Rilana, or Bale, or not to use Melania as like a big example, because Waterfall Dance is debatable on whether or not it's good game mechanics, but I think she's a generally good fight. Um, Bosses like these, right? If they can make bosses like these with good terrains, good hitboxes, and make them feel fun, then there is no reason why they should be making bosses like Elden Beast, who's like too big for the screen, where you can't really see what like he's doing unless like you learn like the audio cues, and stuff like that, right? To me, those fights end up for the casual player becoming more luck based than they do skill based, which I do think is problematic. And with Black Myth Wukong, uh, within the first chapter, I haven't seen any bullshit, right? Like, zero bullshit. Good terrains, good fights, good animations. I can't fault them for this, right? And I know the title is like Black Myth Wukong is more Black Myth Wukong is better than your favorite AAA game, right? It is clickbaity, but to an extent, I do believe this, right? And I'm not gonna sit here and say that Black Myth Wukong is definitely a better game than Elden Ring, because Elden Ring does have a lot that's going for it, right? It's probably one of the best open world games that's out, and the amount of customizability you have, the amount of like sandboxing you could do, the amount of fun you can have with the game, is unmatched, right? And I could delve into other realms of both of these games, right, just to compare them, but that's not the point of this video, right? And for the final segment of this video, I'm going to walk back to that rant I had, that short rant I had about wokeness, and sort of expand on it. Because the allegations against Game Science for not having enough female representation in their game, I think it's important to look at because I recently watched a video from Asmongold, and within that video there was this heavy emphasis to bring masculinity back, right? And I have no issue with bringing masculinity back to video games, but I also think it's really important to understand exactly what wokeness in video games is, right? Uh, when I think about wokeness, I immediately look towards virtue signaling as an example of wokeness, right? But if I was to look at an example like Hades, with its overwhelming amount of LGBTQ representation within video games, then I would say that it doesn't come off as wokeness. It comes off more natural because it's very true to the lore, the Greek lore, and they're not trying to make it a point, right? They're not making it an entire character's personality, and that's the issue, right? Even with the new Assassin's Creed, trying to make the entire personality of Yasuke be that he is black, right? He is a black samurai, right? Uh, it's not he is a samurai, but he's black, by the way, right? No, he is a black samurai, right? Like this is the narrative they're trying to push, and if you don't think they're trying to push it, then just listen to the music they're playing in the background for him, right? They want this to be a core part of his identity, right? When in reality, if you read the story of Yasuke, right, yes, they make it a point that he is black, but they 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 focus a lot more on who Yasuke was, what he did, and stuff like that, right? And and I mean, we can really extrapolate on this point for game science as well, right? With female representation. I couldn't I when I first heard that people were complaining, to be honest, I couldn't believe it, because to me it just showed that there's an extreme disconnect in the West, and I think especially in America, with the culture or the environments of other countries, right? And people can't stop for a second to think that the situation in their own like place isn't the situation elsewhere, right? Uh, the majority of gamers has always been male, right? And whilst recently in the West, we've seen like a fairly like large uprise in female gamers to the point where I would say that to an extent there needs to be games out there for like the female gaze, uh, but that isn't to say that all games have to be out there for the female gaze, right? Because a majority of gamers are still men, right? And especially in the East, especially in a place like China, I can guarantee you that less than 1% of gamers there are female, right? And it's a big population there. A big population of gamers. In fact, the world's largest population of gamers, right? So obviously they're going to cater towards the largest audience, right? Because at the end of the day, a game is a product. And universally, all products are sold to their audiences, right? Hair products are sold to women, or I'd say female hair products are sold to women. Makeup, mostly women, right? Cologne, men. Perfume, women. Beer, men, right? And I mean the list can go on and on and on. And these things are differentiated, right? As much as we, even if we try to bridge gaps in what men and women like, right? We will always find differences, because we are different on an emotional level, right? And that isn't to say that there aren't girls who can enjoy Black Myth Wukong out there. In fact, if you're a person, if you're a girl who enjoys games in general, there's no reason why you shouldn't enjoy Black Myth Wukong. Um, and I would encourage you to try it. And if for some reason the idea that there not being any girls in the game pisses you off or throws you off from the game, I'd ask you to reassess why you feel that way. Um, uh, because at the end of the day, the fundamental thing video games should achieve uh, is to be entertaining, right? And I don't think that a female representation is a qualification a game needs in order to achieve entertainment. And I think a lot of game studios have this messed up now, right? Like they think that female representation is a criteria towards having a good game, right? If the game is good and has female representation, it's fine, but they shouldn't put female representation in it for it to be a good game, right? I think that start, all good stories, start off um, from uh, the most ambiguous. What's the word? From all good stories start from a place of ambiguity. I think that's what I'm going at, right? And most good stories I've read have always started from a place of ambiguity, right? The idea of not knowing where you want the story to go, because when you don't know where you want the story to go, the reader doesn't know either. But if you're planning to make something, right, and in your head you're like, I need two gay characters, I need one black guy, I need one Indian guy, I need a Chinese and a Japanese guy, I also need an Indonesian guy. The story is gonna fall apart because you're setting goals that you can achieve. You can achieve well, I should say. Right? You can do all of these things, but the disconnect is gonna be there. And I think you can see that by looking at any diverse friend group, right? If you have a friend group with people of different nationalities, they don't intentionally come together because they're all from different nationalities, right? They came together because they got along, and that's all it is, right? People are people, and the minute you try to make people something uh, which uh, they are not, or try to tie them down to social constructs, which they're not thinking of, I don't know, 100% of the time, is when you start to create these environments, and that's when you start to create wokeness. Uh, and this is a large rant. I apologize because I mean it's kind of I kind of just wanted to discuss the game in general, the climate around the game. So I guess it's on topic, but I think I'm gonna end the video here. Thanks for watching. Just a reminder to subscribe, leave a like, and make sure to check out my Twitch. Make sure to check out my Twitch.